My husband's affair with his secretary was exposed, and his life crumbled overnight. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it, focused on arranging the fresh-cut peonies in the crystal vase Nathan had given me for our 10th anniversary. It was a typical Tuesday morning in our suburban Chicago home, the kind where normalcy felt like a warm blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The kids were at school, the house was quiet, and I was thinking about the charity gala I needed to plan for next month. But the buzzing continued, insistent and demanding, like a swarm of angry bees trapped in my kitchen drawer. When I finally picked up my phone, I saw 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. My stomach twisted as I noticed they were all from people I knew. My sister Kate, my best friend Rachel, even my neighbor Susan, who usually only texted about borrowing sugar or complaining about our shared fence. The most recent message was from Rachel. "Emma, call me right now. Don't look at social media. Just call me." Of course, I did exactly what she told me not to do. With trembling fingers, I opened Twitter, where my notifications had exploded. The first tweet I saw made my world tilt on its axis. Breaking. Nathan Lawson, CEO of Marshall & Reed Consulting, caught in scandalous affair with secretary. Video leaked online. The corporate scandal. Attached was a screenshot that made my breakfast threaten to come back up. There was my husband, the man I'd spent 12 years building a life with, kissing his secretary Madison Turner in what appeared to be his office. The timestamp showed it was from last week, when he'd told me he was working late on the Peterson account. I dropped my phone like it had burned me. The peonies I'd been arranging suddenly seemed garish, their pink petals too, bright against the pristine white of our marble countertop. The silence of our house, which had felt peaceful moments ago, now pressed against my ears like a physical weight. "This has to be a mistake," I whispered to the empty kitchen. But even as the words left my lips, memories started falling into place like pieces of a cruel puzzle. The late nights at the office, the new cologne, the way he'd password protected his phone 2 months ago, claiming it was a new company policy. My hands shook as I picked up my phone again and dialed Nathan's number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. I tried again and again, each attempt more desperate than the last. On the 4th try, I heard his voicemail greeting, the one I'd teased him about recording because he sounded so formal, and something inside me snapped. "Nathan," I heard myself say, my voice eerily calm. "I just saw the video. Everyone's seen it. Come home right now and explain to me why our entire life is trending on Twitter." The doorbell rang just as I hung up. Through the frosted glass panels of our front door, I could see the silhouette of what appeared to be several people. Reporters, probably. The thought made me sick. Our house, the perfect 4-bedroom colonial that we'd bought when I was pregnant, with our first child, was about to become a fishbowl. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Lily's school. "Mrs. Lawson, in light of the current situation, we think it would be best if you picked up Lily early today. Our daughter, our 10-year-old daughter who had just started 5th grade, who still believed in making wishes on fallen eyelashes, who idolized her father. How was I going to explain this to her? And what about 8-year-old James, who had just made the junior soccer team and couldn't wait to show his dad his new cleats?" The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. I could hear voices outside, the unmistakable murmur of news crews gathering. I sank down onto our kitchen floor, my back against the cool refrigerator door where family photos were displayed with cheerful magnets. There was one from last summer's vacation in Maine, all 4 of us smiling on the beach. Nathan had his arm around me, and I remembered thinking how lucky I was, how perfect our life was. "Perfect," I whispered, the word tasting like ashes in my mouth. What a joke. My phone buzzed once more. This time it was Rachel. "I'm coming over. Don't open the door for anyone else. Don't talk to anyone. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I looked down at my hands, still perfectly manicured, from my Saturday appointment at the salon. The diamond ring on my left hand caught the morning light, throwing tiny rainbows across the kitchen floor. 12 years of marriage, reduced to a viral video and a hashtag. The peonies on the counter had started to droop, their petals falling, one by one onto the marble surface. I watched them fall, each petal like a tear, and realized that my own tears hadn't come yet. They would later, I knew. But for now, I felt nothing but a strange, hollow numbness. Outside, I could hear more. Cars pulling up, more voices gathering. Our quiet suburban street was about to become a circus, and I was the main attraction. The perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who had built her entire life around a man who had just destroyed it all with a single kiss, caught on camera. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Nathan. "Emma, I can explain everything. Please don't do anything until I get home." I stared at his message, at the 3 dots that appeared and disappeared as he typed and retyped whatever excuse he was crafting. The numbness started to fade, replaced by something else. Something hot and fierce that rose up from my stomach and burned in my chest. "Explain," I typed back, my fingers striking the keys with sharp, angry jabs. "Explain why our children are being pulled out of school, why our neighbors are filming news crews on our lawn, why my sister just called crying because her coworkers are sharing memes about her brother-in-law's affair." The 3 dots appeared again, then vanished. No response. The doorbell rang a 3rd time, and this time I heard Rachel's voice cutting through the chaos outside. "Emma, it's me. Let me in through the back door." I stood up slowly, my legs shaky but holding. The woman reflected in our French door windows looked like a stranger, pale, shocked, but somehow still standing. As I moved to let Rachel in, I caught one last glimpse of those falling peony petals, pink and perfect and totally wrong for this nightmare of a morning. Nothing would ever be the same after today. I knew that with a certainty that settled into my bones. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known in that moment, was that the destruction of my perfect life would turn out to be the beginning of something else entirely. Something real. Rachel's presence in my kitchen felt like the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned to quicksand. She'd taken one look at me, pulled me into a fierce hug, and then immediately started making coffee, strong enough to strip paint, just the way I needed it. "Your sister's picking up the kids," she told me, sliding a mug across the counter. "Kate will take them to her house until we figure this out." I nodded, grateful that someone was thinking clearly. The crowd outside had grown. I could hear the steady drone of voices through our expensive soundproofing. The doorbell had finally stopped ringing after Rachel had shouted through the door that we were not giving interviews. "Have you seen the actual video?" I asked, wrapping my hands around the hot mug. Rachel's hesitation told me everything. "Emma, show me. I really don't think—" "Rachel," my voice cracked. "I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." She pulled out her phone reluctantly, and I watched as my marriage imploded in 1080p resolution. The video was clearly taken from a security camera in Nathan's office, showing him and Madison in what started as a seemingly innocent conversation. But then he stepped closer. She looked up at him with those big doe eyes that had always irritated me during company functions. When they kissed, it wasn't a sudden passion. It was familiar, practiced. They'd done this before. But it was what happened after the kiss that broke me. They were laughing about something, and I could read Madison's lips clearly. Emma has no idea. Nathan's response was equally clear. She never questions anything. It's perfect. I stood up so quickly my coffee mug shattered on the floor, dark liquid spreading like blood across the pristine tiles. Rachel jumped up to clean it, but I barely noticed. Because at that moment, I heard the garage door opening. "He's here," I whispered. Rachel straightened up, coffee-soaked paper towels in hand. "Do you want me to stay?" I shook my head. This confrontation needed to happen without witnesses. Nathan walked in through the garage door like he did every evening, briefcase in hand, suit still pristine. The sight of him doing something so normal made me want to scream. He stopped short when he saw me, his face a mask of practiced concern. "Emma, darling, I can explain everything. She never questions anything," I quoted back to him, my voice shaking. "It's perfect." The color drained from his face. "You saw the video." "Everyone saw the video, Nathan. Our children's teachers saw the video. The neighbors saw the video. The entire internet saw the video." Rachel quietly slipped out the back door, giving my shoulder a squeeze as she passed. Nathan set his briefcase down, and I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "Good. It's not what you think," he started, but I cut him off with a laugh that sounded foreign to my own ears. "Really? Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. I think you've been sleeping with your 25-year-old secretary, laughing about your stupid, trusting wife, and now you're only sorry because you got caught. That's not fair." "Fair?" The word exploded out of me. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that Lily's teacher had to pull her out of class today? Is it fair that James is probably going to have reporters shoving cameras in his face? Is it fair that our entire life is now a trending hashtag?" He took a step toward me, hands raised placatingly. "Emma, please, we can fix this. We can hire a PR team, release a statement." "A statement?" I stared at him, really looked at him for the first time since he'd walked in. His perfectly pressed suit, his carefully styled hair, the way he was already thinking about damage control. Had he always been this polished? This calculated? "You think this is about PR?" "Of course not, but we need to manage the situation." "The situation?" I grabbed my phone, pulled up Twitter. "You mean this situation? Where people are placing bets on how long you've been sleeping with Madison? Or this situation, where your company's stock has dropped 15% today? Or maybe this situation, where our son's soccer coach just emailed to say some parents are uncomfortable with James being on the team because of the scandal?" Each word hit him like a physical blow, but I couldn't stop. 12 years of trust, and love and building a life together. All of it meaningless because he couldn't keep his hands off his secretary. "Emma," his voice cracked. "Please, I love you." "No." The word came out quiet but firm. "You love the idea of me. The perfect wife who never questions anything, remember? The woman who manages your social calendar and raises your children and looks the other way while you build your perfect life. But that woman? She died about 3 hours ago when she watched her husband kiss his secretary on a viral video." He sank into one of our kitchen chairs, head in his hands. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me why." My voice was steady now, even as tears finally started to fall. "I want you to tell me what Madison has that was worth destroying our family over." "It wasn't about Madison," he said quietly. "It wasn't about you. It was just... I don't know. Everything was so perfect, so planned. Madison was unexpected, exciting." "Exciting," I repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Well, I hope it was exciting, enough to make up for what happens next." He looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means I just got off the phone with Lucas Bennett." Nathan's face went pale. Lucas was the best divorce attorney in Chicago, known for his aggressive strategy and his perfect record in high-profile cases. "You can't be serious," Nathan stammered. "Emma, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, take some time." "The time to work things out was before you started sleeping with your secretary," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "The time to save our marriage was before you laughed about how I never question anything. Now it's time for you to leave." "Leave? This is my house. Actually, I pulled out my phone. According to Lucas, since the house was purchased, with my inheritance money and is in my name, it's my house. He'll be sending over the preliminary paperwork tomorrow. Until then, I suggest you pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. You can't do this, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew I could. More importantly, he knew I would. I already am. I walked to our kitchen window, where I could still see reporters camped out on our lawn. You have 30 minutes to pack whatever you need. Then you can face your adoring public and explain to them why you're leaving your family home with a suitcase. He stood up slowly, looking lost in his own kitchen. The kids are with Kate. We'll figure out custody arrangements through our lawyers. I turned back to him, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, human. But then I remembered the video, remembered his laugh as he dismissed our entire marriage, and the moment passed. 30 minutes, Nathan. The clock's ticking. He nodded once, then headed upstairs. I listened to his footsteps, the sound of drawers opening and closing, the muffled curse when he dropped something. Each sound was like a full stop at the end of a chapter in my life. When he came back down, suitcase in hand, he paused at the kitchen door. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it. But it did happen, and now we both have to live with the consequences. He opened his mouth as if to say something else, then closed it, with one last look around the kitchen, at the broken coffee mug still on the floor, at the wilting peonies on the counter, at me. He walked out. I watched through the window as he pushed through the crowd of reporters, ignoring their shouted questions. When his car pulled away, someone started taking pictures of me watching from the window. I let them see me standing here, tear-stained but upright. Let them see that I wasn't hiding. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Do you want me to come back? Not yet, I typed back. I need a minute. I looked around our kitchen, my kitchen now, and noticed Nathan's briefcase still sitting by the door where he'd left it. Perfectly polished leather, monogrammed with his initials, the perfect accessory for the perfect executive with his perfect life. I picked it up and put it by the trash can. He could get it later, along with the rest of his perfectly crafted life that had just shattered into a million imperfect pieces. Outside, the reporters were still waiting. Inside, a broken coffee mug and fallen peony petals marked the spot where my marriage had ended. And somewhere in between, I was standing, breathless but unbroken, on the edge of whatever came next. Kate's house had always been my safe haven, a place where I could relax and be myself. But as I pulled into her driveway that evening, carefully, checking my rearview mirror to ensure no reporters had followed me, it felt different. The warm yellow light spilling from her windows seemed to highlight the darkness gathering around the edges of my world. I sat in my car for a long moment, trying to compose myself. How do you tell your children that their father isn't coming home? That their world is about to change forever? That tomorrow at school they might hear things that will break their hearts? The front door opened before I could spiral further into these thoughts. Kate stood there, her face etched with concern. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of Lily's pink backpack hanging on its usual hook, placed there as if this was just another normal afternoon at Aunt Kate's house. They're in the basement watching a movie, Kate said as I walked in. I figured they should stay away from TV and tablets for now. I nodded, grateful for my sister's foresight. Have they asked? Only why they had to leave school early. I told them you'd explain everything. She squeezed my hand. Do you want me to stay with you while you talk to them? I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The basement steps creaked under my feet as I descended. The familiar sound of The Lion King filled the air, their comfort movie, the one they always wanted to watch when they were sick or sad. My heart clenched. Somehow they must have sensed something was wrong. James noticed me first. "Mom!" He jumped up from the couch, his face brightening. Then he saw my expression, and his smile faltered. "What's wrong?" Lily was curled up in Kate's oversized armchair, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She didn't move, but her eyes found mine, wide and worried. At 10, she was already too perceptive for her own good. I sat down on the coffee table facing them both, hitting pause on the remote. Mufasa froze mid-speech on the screen behind me. "I need to talk to you both about something very important." James settled back onto the couch, his shoulders tense. At 8, he was still young enough to believe that all problems could be fixed, but old enough to recognize when something was seriously wrong. "Is this about why we had to leave school?" Lily asked quietly. Tommy in my class said his mom saw something about Dad on her phone and started crying. My carefully prepared speech evaporated. How do you compete with playground whispers and crying mothers? I took a deep breath, remembering what the child psychologist I'd frantically called earlier had said, "Be honest, be age-appropriate, be reassuring." "Yes, sweetheart. It's about Dad." I reached out and took one of their hands in each of mine. Dad made some choices that have hurt our family. He's going to be living somewhere else for a while. "Like a business trip?" James asked hopefully. "No, honey, not like a business trip." I squeezed their hands gently. "Dad and I are going to get divorced. Do you know what that means?" Lily's face crumpled. "Like Sarah's parents? They don't live together anymore. Sarah has 2 bedrooms now." "Something like that, yes. But why?" James pulled his hand away, anger flashing across his young face. "Why can't he just say sorry and come home?" I closed my eyes briefly, fighting back tears. Sometimes when grown-ups hurt each other, saying sorry isn't enough. Your father made some choices that changed everything. "Because of that lady?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "I heard Mrs. Peterson tell my teacher it was because of Dad's secretary." My heart shattered. Of course she'd heard something. In this age of instant information and whispered gossip, how could she not have? "Yes," I said finally. "Dad had a relationship with his secretary, and that's not okay when you're married to someone else." "I hate him," James burst out suddenly, tears streaming down his face. "I hate him, and I hate her, and I hate everything." I pulled him into my arms as he sobbed, and Lily joined us a moment later, her stuffed rabbit squished between us. We sat there on the floor, crying together, while Mufasa's frozen image watched from the screen. "Listen to me, both of you," I said, when their sobs had quieted to hiccups. "This is not your fault. Nothing you did caused this, and nothing you could have done would have prevented it. Your father made his choices, but they have nothing to do with how much he loves you." "Will we still see him?" Lily asked. "Of course you will. He's still your dad, and he still loves you very much." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I knew they needed to hear them. "I don't want to see him," James mumbled into my shoulder. "That's okay too," I stroked his hair. "You don't have to decide anything right now. We're just going to take things one day at a time." "Can we stay at Aunt Kate's tonight?" Lily asked. I nodded. "Yes, we're all staying here tonight. Tomorrow we'll go home and figure out our new normal." "What about school?" Lily's voice trembled. "Everyone's going to know." "Yes, they probably will." I pulled back so I could look them both in the eye. "And that's going to be hard. Some people might say unkind things or ask questions that make you uncomfortable. But you know what? We're strong. We're going to hold our heads high and get through this together." "Like a team?" James asked, a glimmer of his usual spirit returning. "Exactly like a team." I managed a smile. "Team Lawson, the 3 of us." "Can we finish the movie?" Lily asked, wiping her eyes with her rabbit's ear. "Of course." I settled onto the couch, and they curled up on either side of me, just like they used to when they were smaller. I hit play, and Mufasa's voice filled the room again, talking about the great circle of life. As my children's breathing slowly steadied against me, I thought about circles, how they end where they begin, how they can be broken, but also reformed into new shapes. Our family circle was broken now, but maybe we could make something new from the pieces. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Rachel checking in, or Lucas with more legal details, or maybe even Nathan trying to explain again. But I ignored it. Right now, in this basement with my children pressed against me, watching a cartoon lion teach his son about life and loss and love, I was exactly where I needed to be. Outside, reporters might be hunting for quotes, and neighbors might be whispering behind their hands. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and decisions and more tears. But here, in this moment, we were just a mother and her children, holding each other through the storm. "Mom?" James whispered as Simba sang about being king. "Yes, baby." "We're going to be okay, right?" I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. "Yes," I said, and for the first time since seeing that video, I actually believed it. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be extraordinary. The offices of Bennett and Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of a gleaming, downtown Chicago skyscraper. As the elevator climbed, my stomach lurched, though whether from the height or my nerves I couldn't tell. Rachel sat beside me, having insisted on coming along. "You shouldn't do this alone," she'd said, and for once I didn't argue. I'd spent the morning getting the kids settled at their new temporary school, an expensive private academy that Lucas had recommended, one used to handling high-profile situations. The headmaster had assured me they had protocols in place to protect students from media attention. The word protocols had made me want to cry, but I'd nodded gratefully instead. "Mrs. Lawson?" The receptionist's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Mr. Bennett will see you now." Rachel squeezed my hand before I stood. "I'll be right here." Lucas Bennett's corner office offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, but it was the man himself who commanded attention. Tall and lean, with silver threading through his dark hair, he projected an air of absolute confidence. When he stood to greet me, his handshake was firm, but not overwhelming. "Emma," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. "I've been reviewing your case. Please, sit." I sank into the chair, grateful for its solid support. I hadn't slept properly in days, and everything felt slightly unreal, like I was watching my life through a foggy window. "Before we begin," Lucas said, settling behind his desk, "I want you to know that everything said in this room stays in this room. No leaks, no press releases, nothing without your explicit approval. I know trust is a sensitive issue right now." I almost laughed at the understatement. Trust had become as fragile as spun glass in my world. "Now," he continued, opening a leather portfolio, "let's talk strategy. The video of your husband's indiscretion has complicated things, but not necessarily to your disadvantage." "How so?" "Public sympathy is overwhelmingly on your side. Nathan's company is facing shareholder pressure. They're likely to terminate him to distance themselves from the scandal. This gives us significant leverage in negotiating the divorce settlement." I shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to destroy him." Lucas's eyes softened slightly. "Emma, may I be frank?" I nodded. "Your husband didn't just have an affair. He humiliated you publicly. He exposed your children to ridicule. The video shows him mocking your trust. The time for mercy was before he did all that." His words hit me like physical blows, each one forcing me to confront truths I'd been trying to avoid. "What do you suggest?" I asked finally. "We go after everything. The house is already in your name, thanks to your inheritance. We'll demand primary custody of the children, with supervised visitation for Nathan until we're satisfied he can handle it responsibly. We'll seek substantial alimony given the length of your marriage and the fact that you put your career on hold to support his. And we'll push for a significant portion of his assets, including his stock options and retirement accounts. He'll fight it. Let him. Lucas leaned forward. Every time he fights, we remind the judge about the video, about how he exposed his children to public scandal, about how he abused his position of authority with a subordinate. Trust me, Emma, he doesn't want this going to trial. My phone buzzed. Another text from Nathan. I'd been ignoring them all morning. Lucas noticed. He's trying to contact you? Constantly, saying he wants to talk, to explain. Don't respond. Everything goes through me now. He paused, studying me. There's something else you should know. My investigator found evidence that Madison wasn't his first affair. The world tilted sideways. What? There were others, at least 2 that we can prove. One 3 years ago with a client, another with a colleague about 18 months ago. Both were brief, but they establish a pattern. I gripped the arms of my chair, feeling the leather crack under my fingers. 3 years ago, 18 months ago, all those nights I'd waited up, all those business trips I'd never questioned. Emma, Lucas's voice seemed to come from far away. Do you need a moment? I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. No, I need to know everything. Every lie, every betrayal. I need to know exactly what I'm fighting. He nodded approvingly. Good, because there's more. The company's internal investigation has revealed some financial irregularities in Nathan's expense accounts. Nothing criminal, but certainly unethical. They're building their case for termination. He's going to lose everything, I whispered. Not everything. He'll still have his skills, his experience. He'll find another job eventually. But yes, his life is going to change dramatically. Lucas's voice was gentle but firm. The question is, what do you want your life to look like? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the lake. The water was choppy today, white-capped waves breaking against the shore. Like my life, turbulent on the surface, with dangerous currents running underneath. My voice caught. What did I want? The old life was gone, shattered like that coffee mug on my kitchen floor. I want my children to be proud of me. I want them to see that their mother isn't a victim or a joke. Yes? I turned back to face him. I want what's fair. Not revenge, not destruction. Just justice. Lucas smiled for the first time. That, Mrs. Lawson, I can help you with. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Sarah, please bring in the preliminary paperwork. As his assistant entered with a stack of documents, Lucas stood. One more thing, Emma. The press is going to want your side of the story. Every talk show in America would love to have Nathan Lawson's wronged wife on their couch. We need to consider how to handle that. No interviews, I said firmly. I won't turn my pain into entertainment. I agree, but we do need to control the narrative. I suggest a single, dignified statement. Something that shows strength without bitterness. Let Nathan be the one flailing in public, trying to explain himself. You stay above it all. I thought about that as I signed paper after paper, each signature another step away from my old life. Above it all. Like those waves on the lake, they could crash and foam on the surface, but deep down, the water remained unchanged, powerful in its silence. When I emerged from Lucas's office an hour later, Rachel took one look at my face and stood up. Lunch, she announced. You need food, wine, and a chance to process whatever happened in there. I glanced at my watch. Almost noon. Somewhere, across town, Nathan was probably sitting in his own lawyer's office, reading reports about his impending termination, learning that his carefully constructed life was crumbling. Part of me ached for him, for the man I'd loved for so long. But a larger part of me, the part that had signed those papers with a steady hand, felt something else stirring. Not revenge, not hatred, but something harder and cleaner. The sharp edge of justice, cutting away the dead wood of my old life to make room for new growth. Yes, I told Rachel, following her to the elevator. But first, we need to stop somewhere. Where? The salon. If I'm going to face the world as the new Emma Lawson, I need to look the part. Rachel's smile was fierce and proud. Now that's the Emma I know. As we descended in the elevator, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished doors. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who had arranged peonies in her perfect kitchen just days ago. She was harder, sharper, more real. She was ready for war. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Rachel's favorite stylist, Antoine, had worked what he called his post-divorce magic, transforming my safe suburban mom honey blonde into a sophisticated platinum that made my green eyes look almost feral. The cut was shorter, sharper, with angles that emphasized my cheekbones and jaw. Now the outside matches the inside, he'd declared, spinning my chair to face the mirror. He was right. I looked like someone who could walk into Nordstrom on Michigan Avenue without flinching at the thought of running into Madison Turner, which was exactly what I needed to do. The children's private school uniforms wouldn't buy themselves, and I refused to send an assistant. I refused to hide. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked as we pulled into the parking garage. "We could order online." I checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, a bold red that Antoine had insisted completed the transformation. "I'm sure. The kids start school on Monday. I need to do this." The store was busy with its usual Saturday afternoon crowd. Few heads turned as I walked in, phones appearing in hands, but I kept my chin up and my pace steady. Rachel stayed close, her presence like a shield at my back. We made it to the children's department without incident. I was examining blazers in Lily's size when I heard the sharp intake of breath behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. I'd heard that same affected little gasp at enough office parties. "Emma." Madison's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't expect to see you here." Now I did turn, taking my time, letting the blazer hang perfectly from one manicured finger. She looked terrible. Designer outfit wrinkled, dark circles poorly concealed under her eyes. "Good." "Madison." I kept my voice level, pleasant even. "How surprising to see you shopping during work hours." "Oh, wait." I tilted my head slightly. "That's right. You're on administrative leave pending termination, aren't you?" She flinched. Behind her, I could see phones being raised, people pretending to shop while edging closer to hear. Let them. Let them see which of us was breaking and which was standing tall. "Emma, please." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I need to explain. Nathan. He told me you didn't love him anymore. He said your marriage was just for show." I laughed, a clear, ringing sound that turned more heads. "Is that what he told you?" "That's fascinating, considering he told his previous mistress that I was clinically depressed. And the one before that? He said I was frigid." I watched the color drain from her face. "Oh, you didn't know about them. How awkward." Rachel made a small sound behind me, pride mixed with concern. Madison swayed slightly, gripping a nearby rack for support. "Previous? What are you talking about?" "You really should have done your research before becoming the other woman," I said, selecting another blazer and holding it up to examine the stitching. "Nathan has quite a pattern. Young, ambitious women who think they're special enough to make a married man leave his family." I met her eyes directly. "How does it feel to be just another statistic?" "You're lying," she whispered, but uncertainty crawled across her face. "Am I?" Ask him about Vanessa from the London office, or Christina from the Boeing account. Better yet, ask him about the real reason he left his last firm. I turned to Rachel. What do you think of this blazer for Lily? The navy or the black? The navy, Rachel said, playing along perfectly. It brings out her eyes. You've ruined everything, Madison burst out suddenly. The video wasn't supposed to get out. Now my career is over. My reputation is destroyed. I ruined everything? I cut her off, my voice sharp as a blade. You slept with my husband. You laughed about betraying me. You helped expose my children to public humiliation. And you have the audacity to play victim? A small crowd had definitely gathered now, poorly disguising their interest in our conversation. Madison noticed too, her eyes darting around frantically. I never meant to get caught, clearly. I draped both blazers over my arm. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to finish shopping for my children's school uniforms. I assume you have somewhere else to be? Though I suppose job hunting is difficult these days, especially with your recent notoriety. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and fled, nearly running into a display of sweaters in her haste. I watched her go, maintaining my composed expression even as my hands shook slightly. That, Rachel said quietly, was magnificent. Was it? I moved toward the register, my steps measured and calm. I feel sick. You didn't say anything that wasn't true. I know. That's what makes me sick. All those women, all those lies. I handed my credit card to the wide-eyed saleswoman. I spent 12 years thinking I had a perfect marriage, and it was all a fantasy. No, Rachel corrected me. You spent 12 years being a perfect wife and mother. The only fantasy was thinking Nathan deserved you. I signed the receipt, accepting the shopping bags with a gracious smile. All around us, people were typing on phones, no doubt sharing their first-hand account of the confrontation. By tonight, it would be all over social media. Let's get out of here, I said. I need to pick up the kids from Kate's. In the car, Rachel finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. How long have you known about the others? Lucas's investigator found out yesterday. I leaned my head back against the seat. Nathan doesn't know we know yet. He's still trying to paint Madison as a momentary lapse in judgment, a single mistake. When are you going to tell him? I'm not. I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. Lucas is saving it for the settlement negotiations. Nathan can either give me what I want, or we can let every detail of his past affairs come out in court. Rachel whistled low. Remind me never to cross you. I thought about Madison's face when I mentioned the other women, about Nathan's desperate texts still lighting up my phone, about the way my children's eyes followed me now, looking for signs that their world might shatter again. I'm not being cruel, I said softly. I'm being smart. Nathan took everything from me, my marriage, my trust, my children's security. Now I'm taking back what I need to build a new life. The difference is, I'm doing it legally, ethically, and with my head held high. We pulled up to Kate's house, where I could see Lily and James playing in the backyard. They looked almost normal, almost happy. James was showing Lily something on his soccer ball, making her laugh. Besides, I added, reaching for my purse, the woman I used to be died in that kitchen 3 days ago. The woman I am now? She's done being perfect. She's ready to be real. And fierce, Rachel added. Don't forget fierce. I touched my newly platinum hair, felt the unfamiliar sharpness of the cut against my fingers. In the side mirror, my red lips curved into a smile that would have scared my old self. Oh, I won't forget, and neither will anyone else. The morning air bit sharply as I walked Lily and James up the granite steps of Whitmore Academy. The school loomed before us, All ivy-covered brick and tradition. Nothing like the friendly suburban elementary they'd left behind. James clutched his new backpack so tightly his knuckles were white, while Lily kept smoothing her plaid skirt, a nervous gesture she'd developed over the past week. "Remember what we talked about," I said, kneeling to straighten James's tie. "Head up, shoulders back." "And we're Team Lawson," they finished in unison. The motto had become our shield, our battle cry. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb, and I instantly recognized the woman stepping out, Andrea Chen, CEO of one of Chicago's largest tech companies. Her daughter Sophie was in the same grade as Lily. I'd met Andrea a few times at charity events, always finding her intimidating in her perfect designer suits and air of quiet authority. She caught my eye, and to my surprise, changed direction to walk straight toward us. "Emma," she said warmly, as if we were old friends. "I heard the children were starting today." She turned to Lily and James with a genuine smile. "Sophie hasn't stopped talking about having new friends join her class." I saw Lily's shoulders relax slightly as Sophie bounded up, her own navy uniform pristine. "We have the same homeroom," she announced to Lily. "Come on, I'll show you where everything is." Before I could process what was happening, Andrea had linked her arm through mine. "Walk with me," she said, in a tone that made it clear this wasn't a request. To the children, she added, "Sophie, make sure Lily and James find all their classrooms." I watched as Sophie led my children through the heavy wooden doors, chattering enthusiastically about lunch tables and favorite teachers. James looked back, once, and I gave him what I hoped was an encouraging nod. "The first day is the hardest," Andrea said, as we strolled along the path that circled the school's manicured grounds. "For them and for us. You sound like you're speaking from experience." She was quiet for a moment, her Louboutins clicking against the pavement. 3 years ago, my CFO husband decided to run away to Bali with our 19-year-old au pair. Her voice was matter-of-fact. Sophie was 8. The tabloids had a field day. I stopped walking, staring at her. Andrea Chen's divorce had been before my time in Chicago's social circles. I'd had no idea. "How did you—" I gestured vaguely, encompassing her success, her confidence, her obvious victory over scandal. "One day at a time, with help." She turned to face me fully. "The same way you're going to do it." "I am?" "Yes." She pulled a business card from her Hermes bag. "This is my lawyer's number. Call her. Elizabeth specializes in high-profile divorces, where there are complicated business interests at stake." I started to explain that I already had Lucas, but Andrea held up a hand. "Lucas Bennett is excellent at what he does. But Elizabeth—" She smiled, and for a moment I saw the steel beneath her elegant exterior. "Elizabeth destroys men who think they can cheat on their wives and keep their golden parachutes. She's also spectacular at finding hidden assets." My heart skipped. Nathan had been acting strange about the offshore accounts Lucas had discovered. "Hidden assets?" Andrea checked her watch. "I have a board meeting in 40 minutes, but let's have lunch this week. There are things you need to know about the business side of divorce. Things I learned the hard way." "Why are you helping me?" I asked before I could stop myself. She studied me for a long moment. "Because 3 years ago I was you. Shocked, humiliated, trying to protect my child while my husband's mistakes played out in public. But mostly," her smile turned sharp, "because I'm tired of watching powerful men think they can treat their wives like disposable assets." A black town car pulled up to the curb. "That's my ride," Andrea said. "Call Elizabeth." "And Emma?" She squeezed my arm. "That new haircut suits you. Nothing says fuck you quite like platinum blonde and red lipstick." I watched her slide into the car, my mind racing. Nathan had been nervous about the financial discussions, changing the subject whenever Lucas brought up certain accounts. I'd assumed it was just discomfort about the divorce in general, but now My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Need to meet ASAP. Found something interesting in Nathan's company emails. Before I could reply, another text came through. This one from Nathan. The kids started at Whitmore today, right? I should be there. This isn't fair. I typed back before I could stop myself. Nothing about this is fair. You lost the right to should when you lost their trust. Blocking his number would be the smart thing to do, but some part of me needed him to see my responses, to know that I wasn't hiding. Let him see my anger, my strength. Let him wonder what else I might discover. A movement caught my eye. Lily at a second-floor window waving down at me. She looked so small in her new uniform, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. James appeared beside her, and then Sophie, all three waving now. I waved back, feeling tears prick at my eyes. We were doing this. Actually, doing this. New school, new life, new allies I never expected to have. Andrea's business card felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out, studying the elegant cream cardstock. Elizabeth Morrison, the name read in simple black letters. Below that, a single word, advocate. My phone buzzed again, Rachel this time. How did drop-off go? Need moral support? Actually, I typed back, I think I just joined a whole new support system. I added Andrea's story and forwarded her Elizabeth's contact information. Look her up. Rachel's response was immediate. Holy shit. Andrea Chen is a legend. Nathan won't know what hit him. I smiled, tucking the card carefully into my wallet. The morning sun caught my wedding ring, still sitting heavy on my left hand. For the first time, I slipped it off, dropping it into my purse. The tan line stood out starkly against my skin, but it felt right. Felt true. Walking back to my car, I passed other parents doing the morning drop-off. Some avoided my eyes. Others stared openly. A few offered small smiles or nods. I kept my head high, channeling Andrea's quiet confidence. Let them look. Let them see a woman who wasn't broken by betrayal, but transformed by it. My phone buzzed. One more time. Lucas again. Just heard from a reliable source. Nathan's trying to move money offshore. We need to act fast. I slid into my car and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Andrea's card in my wallet, the absence of my ring on my finger, the echo of my children's waves in my heart. Okay, I typed back to Lucas. Call Elizabeth Morrison. It's time to show Nathan exactly who he's dealing with. The engine purred to life under my hands. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself. Platinum hair gleaming, red lips curved in a smile that was both beautiful and dangerous. Andrea was right. Nothing said "fuck you" quite like a woman who had stopped being afraid of her own power. I pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the old Emma, who would have worried about appearances, about being nice, about keeping the peace. The new Emma had work to do. And Nathan? Nathan had no idea what was coming. Elizabeth Morrison's office felt different from Lucas's. Where his was all masculine leather and lake views, hers was bright and minimal, with abstract art and a desk that looked like sculpted glass. The woman herself projected a similar energy. Precise, transparent, deadly. You were right to come to me, she said, spreading documents across her desk. Nathan's been busy these past few months. Very busy. I sat between her and Lucas, watching as she laid out what looked like a spider's web of financial transactions. Rachel had offered to come, but this felt like something I needed to face alone. 3 offshore accounts, Elizabeth continued, pointing to different papers. All opened within weeks of the video leaking. But here's where it gets interesting. The money trail goes back much further. Lucas leaned forward. How much further? 5 years. Elizabeth's smile was razor sharp. Your husband, Mrs. Lawson, has been systematically moving small amounts of money through a complex network of shell companies. Small enough not to raise flags, large enough to add up to something significant. My throat felt dry. How significant? Just over $4 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. $4 million. Hidden. Stolen. While I'd been clipping coupons for grocery shopping, believing we needed to be financially responsible. The good news, Elizabeth continued, is that he did a sloppy job covering his tracks. He was clearly planning this long before the affair became public, but he rushed the final transfers. Made mistakes. Classic narcissist behavior, Lucas added. They always think they're smarter than everyone else. I picked up one of the documents, studying the dates. This transfer, it was the day after James's birthday party. We had the whole family over. Nathan gave a speech about how grateful he was for all of us. Men like Nathan compartmentalize, Elizabeth said gently. They can be loving husbands and fathers in one moment and commit fraud in the next. It's not about you. It's about their own sense of entitlement. My phone buzzed. A text from Kate. Nathan just showed up at my house looking for the kids. I didn't let him in. He's getting desperate, Lucas observed, reading over my shoulder. The company's board meets tomorrow to discuss his termination. Which explains this. Elizabeth held up another document. He tried to move another $1 million offshore last night. We caught it in time. The accounts are frozen now. I thought about Nathan showing up at Kate's, probably in one of his perfectly tailored suits, expecting to charm his way in like he always had. What do we do next? We go nuclear, Elizabeth said simply. Lucas has already filed the divorce petition. Now we add financial fraud charges. We get forensic accountants involved. We make it clear to Nathan that if he doesn't agree to our terms, he's not just losing his marriage. He's facing criminal charges. Will that work? It already is. Lucas handed me his phone, showing an email from Nathan's lawyer requesting an urgent meeting. They want to discuss settlement terms. I stood up and walked to Elizabeth's window. Chicago spread out below, the city where I'd lived my entire adult life as Nathan Lawson's wife. The city where I'd believed in our perfect marriage, our perfect life. No, I said finally. No? Both lawyers spoke at once. I turned back to face them. No settlement. Not yet. He needs to understand exactly what he's done. To me, to our children, to our entire life together. Elizabeth's smile widened. You want to make him sweat. I want the truth, all of it. Every account, every lie, every woman he slept with while telling me he was working late. My voice cracked slightly. My children deserve to know that their mother fought for what was right, not just what was easy. Lucas and Elizabeth exchanged looks. It will get ugly, Lucas warned. It's already ugly, but now it's going to be ugly on my terms. I sat back down, pulling the financial documents closer. Show me everything. I want to understand every transaction, every shell company. I want to know exactly what he thought he could get away with. For the next 3 hours, we went through it all. The money trail painted a picture of a man who had been planning his escape for years, squirreling away funds while maintaining his image as the perfect husband and father. Each discovery felt like a fresh betrayal, but also like ammunition. My phone kept buzzing. Nathan, then his lawyer, then Nathan again. I ignored them all until a text from Lily made me pause. Dad's trying to FaceTime me. Should I answer? I showed the message to Lucas. The children's phones, he said immediately. We need to get them new ones, clean numbers. He's going to try to use them to get to you. Already done, Elizabeth said, pressing a button on her desk phone. Sarah, get me Jerry from IT. We need 3 new secure phones by tomorrow morning. To me, she added, This is what I do, Emma. I think 3 steps ahead of men who only plan 1 step at a time. I texted Lily back. No, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about? All communication with Dad goes through the lawyers for now. Her response was immediate. Okay. Love you, Mom. We're still Team Lawson. Team Lawson. The words gave me strength. There's one more thing, Elizabeth said, pulling out a final document. We found something interesting in Nathan's emails. Communications with Madison going back over a year. My heart stopped. A year? The affair didn't start as suddenly as he claims. They were flirting, planning. He was grooming her, promising her promotions, mentoring opportunities, classic predatory behavior. The implications hit me hard. Not just an affair, but a calculated seduction. Not just betrayal, but premeditation. Does she know about the money? I asked. No, Lucas said. As far as we can tell, Madison was just a convenient distraction. The money was his exit strategy. His exit strategy, I repeated. The words tasted bitter. He was planning to leave all along. Men like Nathan, Elizabeth said, they don't plan to leave. They plan to have it all. The respectable wife at home, the young girlfriend at work, the secret fortune waiting offshore. They only leave when they're caught. My phone buzzed again. Nathan had switched to email. Emma, please, let me explain about the accounts. It's not what you think. I was protecting our future. I handed the phone to Lucas. Draft a response. Something legal and terrifying. As he typed, I gathered up the documents, organizing them into neat piles. Each paper represented a choice Nathan had made, a moment when he'd decided that his desires were more important than our family. One last thing, Elizabeth said as I stood to leave. Andrea Chen mentioned you have a background in event planning? I nodded. Before the children, I'd run my own small company, specializing in charity galas and corporate events. The Women's Legal Defense Fund is hosting their annual fundraiser next month. They need someone to step in and take over the planning. Andrea suggested you might be interested. I stared at her. You want me to plan a party? Now? I want you to remind yourself and this entire city that you're more than Nathan Lawson's soon-to-be ex-wife, that you have skills, talents, value. She held out a business card. The director's name is Claire. She's expecting your call. I took the card, feeling its weight in my hand. When was the last time I'd done something just for me? Something that used my skills, my creativity? Think about it, Elizabeth said. And Emma, get some rest. Tomorrow we go to war. In the elevator, I studied my reflection in the polished doors. The platinum hair still surprised me, but the woman wearing it didn't. She looked ready for battle. Ready for truth. Ready for justice. My phone buzzed one final time. Rachel. How did it go? I thought about the $4 million, the year-long seduction of Madison, the carefully constructed web of lies that had been my marriage. But I also thought about Team Lawson, about Andrea Chen's quiet strength, about Elizabeth's fierce intelligence. It went, I typed back, exactly the way it needed to go. Want to help me plan a charity gala? The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and I walked out with my head high. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and accusations, frozen accounts, and painful revelations. But tonight? Tonight I was going to go home, hug my children, and start planning one hell of a party. Because Elizabeth was right. I was more than Nathan's victim. I was more than his lies. I was Emma Lawson, and I was just getting started. The Women's Legal Defense Fund office buzzed with the controlled chaos I remembered from my event planning days. 3 weeks into planning their gala, I'd transformed their conference room into a command center, with mood boards, vendor contracts, and seating charts covering every surface. It felt good to flex these muscles again, to lose myself in the precise choreography of creating the perfect event. The RSVPs are at 200% of last year's attendance, Claire announced, walking in with yet another stack of responses. Every major CEO and business leader in Chicago wants to be there. The waiting list is getting ridiculous. I smiled, pinning another name card to the seating chart. Amazing what a little scandal will do for ticket sales. Amazing what the right event planner will do, Claire corrected. Though I admit the gossip factor isn't hurting. Half these people probably want to see you face off with Nathan. My hand stilled over the seating chart. Is he on the list? His company bought a table before everything. Their new CEO confirmed they're still attending. Claire watched me carefully. We can revoke their invitation. I shook my head. No, let them come. I picked up another name card. But put their table next to Andrea Chen's tech company. She'll enjoy making them squirm. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Nathan's lawyer requesting emergency meeting. Says he has new information that changes everything. I showed Claire the message. She whistled low. What are you going to do? What I've been doing. Let the lawyers handle it. I turned back to the seating chart, but my hands were shaking slightly. Nathan had been escalating since the discovery of his offshore accounts. Last week, he'd tried to pick the kids up from school without authorization. Yesterday, he'd sent a lengthy email to all our mutual friends, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive wife and an overzealous legal team. Emma. Claire's voice was gentle. Take a break. You've been here since 7. I glanced at my watch, surprised to see it was already afternoon. The kids would be done with school soon. Since the unauthorized pickup attempt, I'd made sure either Rachel or Kate was there every day. My phone buzzed again. Elizabeth this time. Meeting set for 4 p.m. Bring your game face. I have to go, I told Claire, already gathering my things. The lawyers. Go. She gestured at the conference room. This will keep. Besides, you've already done more in 3 weeks than our last planner did in 3 months. The drive to Elizabeth's office gave me time to think. What new information could Nathan possibly have? The forensic accountants had found everything, every hidden account, every secret transaction. Unless... Elizabeth and Lucas were waiting in the conference room when I arrived. One look at their faces confirmed my suspicions. Madison, I said before they could speak. Lucas nodded. She's agreed to testify about the affair. In Nathan's favor? That's what they want us to believe. Elizabeth's smile was predatory. They don't know we have the emails proving he groomed her for over a year. Right on time, Nathan's lawyer walked in, Harold Preston, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Nathan followed, and my breath caught. He'd lost weight. His perfect suits hung loose now, and gray had appeared at his temples. Emma, he said softly, you look... Let's begin. Elizabeth cut him off smoothly. You requested this meeting, gentlemen. Harold cleared his throat. Yes, we have a witness willing to testify that the affair was mutual, consensual, and did not involve any workplace coercion or misuse of authority. Madison, Elizabeth said flatly, how much did you pay her? Nathan flinched. Harold blustered. That's an outrageous accusation. Is it? Elizabeth opened a folder. Because we have emails, hundreds of emails, starting 18 months ago when Madison was first hired. Emails about mentoring, about special projects, about promotions. She slid one across the table. About how Nathan could help her career if she was cooperative. The color drained from Nathan's face. Those emails are private. We're private, Lucas corrected. Now they're evidence. I watched my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, as he realized his last play had failed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Why are we here? I asked, surprising everyone. Really, Nathan? Why? He met my eyes for the first time. The gala, he said quietly. You're planning the Women's Legal Defense Fund Gala. And every major player in Chicago business will be there. My company's new CEO, our biggest clients. He swallowed hard. Emma, please. My career is hanging by a thread. Understanding dawned. You thought you could convince me to… What? Cancel the gala? Uninvite your company? Make you look like the victim? I thought we could talk. Like we used to. Like we used to, I repeated. When I believed every lie you told me? When I thought our marriage was perfect? I stood up, smoothing my skirt. The gala will go on. Your company's table will be there right next to Andrea Chen's. And you know what, Nathan? I hope you come. Emma, I hope you come and see exactly what you lost. Not just your wife, not just your family, but your power. Because that's what this was always about, wasn't it? Power? Elizabeth and Lucas were watching with poorly concealed admiration. Even Harold looked uncomfortable. The gala is in 2 weeks, I continued. I've invited every person you ever did business with, every client you ever courted, every colleague you ever competed with. They'll all be there, watching as I host the most successful fundraiser in the organization's history. And you can sit at your table and know that while you were hiding money offshore and seducing your secretary, I was building something real. Nathan's face had gone ashen. This is revenge? No. I picked up my purse. This is business. Elizabeth, Lucas, I believe we're done here. They nodded, gathering their papers. Nathan remained seated, staring at his hands. Oh, and Nathan? I paused at the door. Madison's probably going to want a refund when she finds out about those emails. I'd handle that quickly if I were you. The elevator ride down was silent. Finally, Lucas spoke. That was magnificent, Elizabeth finished. Simply magnificent. But I was already checking my phone, texting Rachel about school pickup, reviewing menu options for the gala, moving forward. Because that's what powerful women do. We don't waste time on revenge. We build empires on the ashes of what tried to destroy us. My phone buzzed one last time. Claire. Just got another major donation for the gala. Guess who? Madison Turner's former boss at her new company. Apparently, she's very interested in supporting women's legal rights. I smiled, stepping out into the Chicago afternoon. The autumn air was crisp, full of possibility. Time to get back to work. I had an empire to build. The Drake Hotel's grand ballroom glowed like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in midnight blue silk, while white orchids cascaded from silver centerpieces I'd spent weeks designing. Everything was perfect, precisely as I'd planned it. Even the Chicago weather had cooperated, providing a crisp October evening, with just enough chill to justify the fur coats and wool tuxedos of Chicago's elite. You've outdone yourself, Andrea said, appearing at my elbow with 2 champagne flutes. When was the last time you saw the Drake this full? I accepted the champagne, taking a small sip to calm my nerves. Never. We're actually breaking fire code regulations, but the hotel made an exception given the guest list. And what a guest list it was. Every major CEO, business leader, and social influencer in Chicago had fought for a ticket. The waiting list alone could have filled another ballroom. But it wasn't just the quantity of guests that made this evening special. It was the quality of the connections being forged. Look. Andrea nodded toward a corner where Claire was deep in conversation with the head of Chicago's largest venture, Capital Firm. She's probably securing funding for the next 5 years of legal aid programs. That's the point, isn't it? I smoothed my dress, a sheath of midnight blue that matched the tablecloths, custom made by a designer who'd heard my story and insisted on dressing me for the evening. It's not just about raising money. It's about building networks. Speaking of networks, Andrea's voice trailed off as a murmur went through the crowd. I didn't need to turn around to know what had caused it. Nathan had arrived. I kept my back turned, pretending to adjust a centerpiece. In the polished silver surface, I could see his reflection, still handsome in his tuxedo but somehow diminished. The new CEO of his company walked beside him, a woman named Patricia Wells, who'd taken over after the board forced Nathan's resignation. "Incoming," Andrea murmured. "Emma." Nathan's voice was soft, uncertain. "This is incredible." Now I did turn, keeping my smile professional. "Thank you, Patricia. I'm so glad you could make it. I've seated you next to some people I think you'll find interesting." Patricia's handshake was firm, her smile genuine. "This is quite an achievement. We're honored to be here, despite the complicated circumstances." Nathan flinched slightly at her words. I saw him notice Andrea's protective stance beside me, the way other women in the room were watching the interaction. He'd walked into this building expecting to find the usual crowd of submissive wives and eager young assistants. Instead, he'd entered a fortress of female power, and he was clearly unsettled. "Your table is right this way," I said smoothly, leading them across the ballroom. As planned, their seats were directly next to Andrea's tech company table, where her senior executives, all women, were engaged in animated conversation. "Emma?" Nathan tried again as Patricia moved to greet someone she knew. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" I glanced at my watch, a Cartier that Elizabeth had helped me buy with money from one of Nathan's frozen accounts. "The program starts in 20 minutes. I need to check on the speakers." "Please." His voice cracked slightly. "I miss the kids. I miss you. We can still fix this." For a moment, I saw him as he used to be. The man I'd fallen in love with. The father of my children. The partner I'd trusted with my life. But then I remembered the emails to Madison. The hidden money. The years of lies. "No, Nathan," I said quietly. "We can't fix this. But I can fix myself, and that's what I'm doing. By humiliating me? By turning everyone I know against me? By showing our children what strength looks like? By showing them that their mother won't be broken by betrayal?" I met his eyes directly. By showing them that success is the best revenge. Before he could respond, Claire clinked her glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Our program is about to begin." I moved toward the podium, where I would be introducing the first speaker. As I walked, I felt the energy of the room shift, felt hundreds of eyes following my progress. These people had come expecting scandal, drama, the spectacle of a wronged wife's revenge. What they would get instead was something far more powerful. The sight of a woman rising from the ashes of her old life, stronger and more magnificent than before. The spotlight felt warm on my face as I took my place at the podium. In the sea of faces before me, I found the ones that mattered. Andrea, smiling proudly. Elizabeth and Lucas at their table of legal eagles. Rachel and Kate, who had insisted on being here to support me. And there, at his table, Nathan, watching as I stepped into the light he had never expected me to find. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Welcome to the Women's Legal Defense Fund's annual gala. Tonight we're here to talk about power, not the power that comes from money or position, but the power that comes from within. The power to stand up, to speak out, to rebuild." As I spoke, I saw Nathan's head bow slightly, saw Patricia lean away from him to whisper something to her tablemate, but I kept my focus on the larger picture. The women in the room who needed to hear this message, the networks being forged, the futures being shaped. "They say success is the best revenge," I continued. "But I've learned it's more than that. Success is proof that we cannot be defined by someone else's betrayal. Success is showing our daughters and sons that strength doesn't come from having power over others, but from having power over ourselves. The room was absolutely silent now, every eye fixed on me. In that moment, I wasn't just Emma Lawson, wronged, wife and event planner extraordinaire. I was every woman who had ever been underestimated, betrayed, or dismissed. And I was rising. Tonight, we're not just raising money for legal defense, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. We're raising awareness. We're raising expectations. We're raising the bar for what women can achieve when we support each other. I saw Nathan stand abruptly, saw him move toward the exit, but I didn't stop speaking. I didn't even pause. Because this night wasn't about him anymore. It was about something much bigger than revenge or redemption. It was about power, real power, and the women who wielded it. As Nathan slipped out of the ballroom, I smiled into the spotlight. And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Supreme Court Justice. The applause was deafening, but I barely heard it. I was too busy watching the doors close behind my past as I stepped firmly into my future. The divorce papers felt lighter than I expected. After months of legal battles, forensic accountants, and negotiations, it all came down to this: 30 pages that officially ended my marriage to Nathan Lawson. I sat at my kitchen counter, in my house, which was now legally mine, alone, and traced my fingers over the embossed seal of the court. "Mom?" Lily's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She stood in the doorway, already dressed for school in her Whitmore uniform. At 11 now, she looked older somehow, wiser. "Is that—" "Yes, sweetheart, it's done." She climbed onto the stool next to me, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Are you sad?" I thought about it carefully. Not sad, exactly. More reflective. 12 years is a long time. "But you're happier now," she said, with the certainty of a child who sees truth clearly. "You smile more. Your real smile, not your worried smile." From upstairs, I heard James practicing his presentation for the school science fair after the initial shock of the divorce. He'd thrown himself into projects and sports with new determination. His therapist said it was his way of creating order from chaos. My son, the scientist, making sense of an uncertain world. My phone buzzed, a text from Andrea. "Final papers today, right? Dinner tonight to celebrate. No arguments." Another message popped up, this one from Claire. "The Foundation's quarterly report is in. Donations up 300% since the gala. When can you start planning next year's event?" And another from Elizabeth. "It's done. Nathan signed everything this morning. No contests, no last-minute surprises. You're free." Free. The word echoed in my mind as I looked around my kitchen. The peonies were gone. I preferred orchids now. And the perfect suburban decor had been replaced by pieces that reflected my own taste. Art I'd chosen, colors I loved, spaces that felt authentically mine. "What happens now?" Lily asked, picking up one of the papers and studying it with serious eyes. "Now?" I smiled, taking the paper gently from her hands. "Now we keep building our new life. You and James focus on school. I focus on growing my event planning business. We have dinner with Aunt Kate on Sundays and movie nights with Rachel on Fridays. We keep being Team Lawson." "And Dad?" I sighed, softly. Nathan had finally stopped fighting, stopped trying to control the narrative. The last time I'd seen him, at James's soccer game last week, he'd looked almost peaceful, accepting. "Dad will always be your father," I said carefully, "and he loves you both very much. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we have to love ourselves enough to demand better." James thundered down the stairs, his science project notes clutched in his hand. Mom, can you listen to my presentation one more time? Of course. I gathered the divorce papers into their folder. But then we need to leave for school. I have a meeting with potential investors this morning. After Nathan's financial deceptions had come to light, several of Andrea's business contacts had approached me about expanding my event planning into a full-service corporate consulting firm. You understand both the social and business aspects, they'd said. You know how to create experiences that build real connections. The kids gathered their things while I listened to James explain his experiment one last time. His voice was confident, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. Lily helped him organize his note cards, adding her own suggestions. They worked together seamlessly now, united by something stronger than trauma. As I drove them to school, I thought about the woman I'd been just 6 months ago. The perfect wife arranging peonies in her perfect kitchen, never questioning, never pushing back. She felt like a stranger now, a character in someone else's story. Mom? James called from the back seat. Are you coming to the science fair tonight? Wouldn't miss it, I promised. And afterward, we're having dinner with Aunt Andrea to celebrate. Celebrate the divorce? Lily asked. Celebrate new beginnings, I corrected. At the school gates, I hugged them both, breathing in their familiar scents. James's sports deodorant that he insisted he needed, Lily's strawberry shampoo. They were changing too, growing into versions of themselves that were stronger for having weathered the storm. Love you, Mom, they called in unison as they ran up the steps. Love you more, I called back, our daily ritual unchanged by all that had shifted around it. Back in my car, I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. The platinum hair had grown out a bit, softer now but still striking. The woman looking back at me wasn't perfect. There were fine lines around her eyes, a slight shadows beneath them from late nights working on business plans. But she was real, authentic, strong. My phone buzzed again. A new email from Nathan. For a moment, my finger hovered over the delete button. But no, I was strong enough now to read whatever he had to say. Emma, it began, I signed the papers this morning. You've won, though I suspect you knew you would. Not because of the lawyers or the evidence, but because you refused to let my mistakes define you. I'm sorry for everything. The lies, the affairs, the stealing. But mostly I'm sorry I never saw how extraordinary you were until you stopped trying to be perfect for me. Take care of our children, help them become as strong as their mother. I deleted the email without responding. He was right. I had won. But not in the way he thought. I'd won by discovering my own worth, by building a network of powerful women who lifted each other up, by showing my children that life's greatest challenges can become our greatest opportunities for growth. Checking the time, I pulled away from the curb. I had a meeting to get to, a business to build, a life to live. The divorce papers in my bag weren't an ending. They were a beginning. My beginning. And this time, I was writing my own story. The Chicago morning spread out before me, sunlight glinting off glass towers and Lake Michigan stretching endless and blue in the distance. Somewhere in this city, Nathan was starting his new job at a smaller firm. Madison was rebuilding her career far from the corporate world, and life was moving forward for everyone touched by the scandal that had seemed so earth-shattering 6 months ago. But here, in my car with the divorce papers finally signed and my future stretching out before me, I felt nothing but peace, and possibility, and power. Real power. The kind that comes from within. The kind that can never be taken away. I pulled into the parking garage of my office building, ready to face whatever came next. Because that's what strong women do. We face things. We build things. We rise. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we help others rise too. Team Lawson wasn't just my children and me anymore. It was every woman who'd helped me rebuild. Every person who'd shown me that strength comes in many forms. Every lesson I'd learned about the difference between looking perfect and being powerful. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for my floor, and smiled at my reflection in the polished doors. Time to rise. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments below. We value your opinion. Click the like button if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to receive more captivating stories. Activate the bell so that you're always the first to know when a new video is published. See you next time.